Hi there. We're back here today again to talk about Magician Master, Book 2 in Raymond Feist's Riftwar Saga, and really the conclusion of the opening book. Because once upon a time, it was one book. I loved reading this. What did Zach think? That's what we're here to learn today. Zach, hot take? Anything?
It should have been one book.
You feel pretty confident now.
There's no question. Just why did we do this?
Stupid Americans. Or stupid American publishers.
Yeah.
We're Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son get together and talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things we enjoy. We're totally fantasy here today. This is a spoiler-light reaction by Zach to Magician Master. If you haven't read it, you're safe to be here. If you have read it, it'll be interesting to see if you agree with Zach's take on it and my additions. I read this a long time ago, and I'm thrilled that he's enjoying it. So tell us about why you really so much feel it should have been one book now, because they thought in their wisdom two books made sense.
Because there was not really conclusion or even like the first book laid background and backstory to this book. This book is what actually happens. The last book was just getting us to the point. So in many ways, the first book was just, hey, let's get to know the characters a little bit, see this, and set up the actual story we want to tell. We don't actually care about most of the story we told in the first book, except for the fact that some characters are in certain places or have certain items that are going to heavily impact the actual story we want to tell.
That makes a lot of sense. So it was foundation, it was setup, it was putting the pieces in place. And now here's the good stuff. This is what we really were excited for.
In terms of a bigger fantasy tome thing, the first book was the first 40 to 50% of a big world building fantasy novel.
Okay.
And then we got the actual content that made it a payoff. And so you just do it as one. Just do it as one.
But you did like Magician Apprentice on its own. It was a good read. You enjoyed it.
Yes, but I also enjoyed it knowing that I was already viewing it as part 1 and part 2 of book 1.
Now, because they are two separate books, this one was the better of the two?
I don't know. I don't know if I can say that.
That's interesting.
This book, part of why it was a good read, necessitated the first book. Like, you needed the first book for the second to make any sense.
But that's almost always true in a series of books.
Yeah, but for it to make sense, and not just make sense like story-wise, but make sense with how you connect and understand the feelings and where things are going and why they're important. Yes, a series builds on itself, but sometimes a book stands alone on its own better, and this one didn't feel that way because it wasn't written that way.
Okay. So, yeah, you still feel very clear about this. It should have been one book.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I did enjoy
Any new elements added in this book that you particularly like? Oh, that was cool. Oh,
Yeah,
I enjoyed that.
Remember when I said that there was a whole nother world? Yeah, we see that other world. It's not the only new element or thing, but it's one of the biggest.
Yeah.
And what does set Feist apart from other works when he first wrote this, that other world is at least, this is going to sound potentially bad, it's Eastern culture colored. I say it that way because it feels like it looks like it's pulling a lot from more Eastern mythologies and cultures than Western. But when I take a step a little bit further and actually try to look at what that culture actually looks like, it's Roman. So it's looking like it's called Eastern, but a lot of how it actually runs is early Rome.
I see where you're going with that. I do see that.
And so for when he was writing it and where it was kind of, I could totally see this having been a fresh, new element of fantasy that people are like, what is this? This is not something we usually read. But as a knock against it, it is a little bit just kind of calling it something different, but not being as different as it could be.
Okay. It definitely gives you this opportunity, or gives Feist this opportunity to shine in doing a whole nother level of world building, because he established this one very tropey, feudal, medieval style world that you got, and now you've got this, which is totally different, a totally other thing.
Problematic in some ways, but also interesting.
And in the midst of both worlds, we have Pug.
Or Melamber.
Melamber. Which name do you like better?
Pug.
Which suits him better, Pug or Melamber?
I just like Pug better.
He shows some growth in the story. It's definitely not the same Pug that we started with, and yet there's a core to him that hasn't changed.
He's still a good Pug.
He's still a good Pug. He's a good boy.
All dogs are good boys, even if they're not dogs.
So you definitely enjoyed this story too. Does it prompt you to want to continue on and finish,
Eventually.
especially that initial saga, the 4 books?
It wraps what it is in self-contained story enough
Mhm.
that I feel content waiting to continue. I
Okay.
did like it, and I'm totally down to continue it, but it's not like I need to run into the next book immediately.
Okay.
Which, unfortunately, because there's so much else to read, means I might not get to the next book for like a year.
Mm.
But I think I'll enjoy it when I get there.
Okay. I will tell you that you'll find the next 2 books very satisfying as well. There's more story to be told here for sure. But then after that, there's another trilogy that's completely set over there in that other world. This Asian influenced Roman culture thing that some people find is their favorite part of the entire Riftwar cycle. It wasn't my favorite part, but I enjoyed it. But it's very different because it leans all in to that other stuff. Whereas you kind of get influenced here, you get touches of it and stuff, but you get much deeper into it in that other trilogy. The Daughter of the Empire trilogy, is that what it's called?
I think the first book of it or something is Daughter of the Empire.
Yeah. So there's probably a different name for this trilogy as a whole. But
I don't know.
that one Feist wrote with a co-author, Janny Wirtz. And so it does have a little different flavor to it. Still
Just
good.
a little bit of spice. Well, not spice. Totally different thing. But
yeah, that's a different series. Any last words on Magician Master?
yeah, I didn't talk about Thomas at all. Or Tomas, if you
Tomas,
prefer.
as I like to say it.
He has a development that is Feist putting in some world building and some stuff that
Oh yeah.
is relatively original.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't bring in any truly original pieces. Like everything is stuff that exists, kind of, but the way that it is impacting this world and puts in some historical context to the world lets us have a glimpse into something beyond the story that we're seeing.
Yes.
And from kind of a secondary character, even though we are seeing things in his point of view at times, he still kind of is a secondary character to the story. It feels like he will be pivotal to the continued building of stories in this world.
There is a lot more that Feist is going to do with Riftwar. Introducing that element will have a lot to do with it. Yeah, you get a taste. There's a lot more going on here than we realized. So much more. And that just gave you a little glimpse. It was a cool glimpse. I did like how Tomas was, just Pug's best friend. And then suddenly, wait a second. We're doing something here. What's going on? That was a cool development.
Certain things throughout both of these books that are coincidences or things that just happened. And for some of it, it is. And for other bits of it, it's very clear, no, this is the very small actions and manipulations of one character who knows how things have to go. And exactly what that means is a little unclear, and how much agency they actually have in that is unclear, but they know how it has to go for some reason, and they're making sure it does.
Interesting. A master puppeteer?
And I won't go that far because I think they see themselves as a puppet as well. And they have a role that they feel they must fill as well, whether they like it or not.
Okay.
They are blessed and cursed with knowledge and foresight.
Well, my analogy comes in true again. There are layers. There's onionage going on again in this story.
It's a good thing I generally like onions. It's not like there's beets. I
Mm.
would have a much bigger problem
Beets are kind of
stomaching
one
this.
note. Yeah, there's no layers.
They're pretty bad.
Well, I love beets, but they're not
No,
onions.
they're bad.
All right. Good place to stop here then. Glad you enjoyed this and getting some of this classic fantasy by one of the classic masters, Raymond E. Feist. I believe Feist is still alive and is still writing, but he's done with Riftwar. That's finished. And he started something brand new that I haven't really checked out at all yet. Probably should, since I enjoyed him enough to read over 30 books. If you haven't checked out Magician's Apprentice and Magician's Master, Magician Apprentice and Magician Master, there's no apostrophe, S. Or if you're in Great Britain, just look for Magician.
You're lucky.
Zach would say you should do so, and I would concur. I'm not putting words in your mouth, right, Zach?
No, you just get Magician.
Very
Do
good.
this one book.
That's where we'll leave you. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to click like down below. And if you haven't yet, we hope you'll subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.